William Parker drove through the winding forest roads, the tall trees standing like sentinels guarding the secrets of the woods. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the landscape, yet a heaviness weighed on his heart. At 35, William had tasted success and failure in equal measure. As a prominent businessman, he had built a reputation for himself and his family name, yet recent ventures had crumbled, leaving him to sift through the rubble of his ambitions. His father's voice echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the expectations that loomed over him. "You must carry the legacy, William. The Parkers don't fail." The words, once a source of motivation, now felt like shackles, binding him to a destiny he was struggling to fulfill. He glanced in the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of his reflection, dark circles under his eyes, a furrowed brow. He sighed deeply, wishing for a moment of peace, a moment where the pressures of life could dissipate like the mist that often blanketed the woods. With the windows slightly rolled down, the fresh scent of pine filled the car, momentarily distracting him from his thoughts. He turned the radio dial, searching for something, a melody, a distraction, anything to drown out the nagging doubts that plagued him. As a familiar tune played softly in the background, a sudden movement caught his eye. He squinted, trying to focus. There, amidst the dense underbrush, he spotted a figure, a child standing alone, her small frame dwarfed by the towering trees. William's heart raced as he pulled over, his instincts kicking in. He couldn't comprehend why a girl so young would be wandering in the woods, lost and vulnerable. He stepped out of the car, the crunch of gravel beneath his shoes echoing in the silence of the forest. "Hey there," he called gently, his voice steady yet laced with concern. "Are you all right?" The girl flinched at the sound of his voice, her wide, frightened eyes locking onto his. She was no older than 7 or 8, with tangled hair that framed her dirt-smudged face. Her clothes were tattered, a patchwork of fabric that looked as if it had seen better days. William approached slowly, trying to reassure her. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking too loudly might draw unwanted attention. "Lily," he repeated softly, kneeling down to her level. "Where are your parents? Are you lost?" She looked away, her small hands clenching into fists at her sides. I don't know," she stammered, a tremor in her voice. "I was with them, but then they were gone." William's heart ached at the tremor of fear in her voice. He scanned the surrounding woods, searching for any sign of adults who might be searching for the girl. "Listen, Lily, I can help you. I have a car right here. We can find your parents together." He extended his hand, palm up, a gesture of trust. After a moment's hesitation, she reached out, her tiny fingers brushing against his. William felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him as he helped her to her feet. "Let's get you out of here," he said, leading her back to the car. As they walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that this small encounter was about to change everything. Once inside the car, Lily remained silent, her gaze fixed out the window, lost in the shadows of the trees. William drove slowly, mindful of the girl sitting beside him. He tried to keep the conversation light. "So, Lily, do you have any pets at home?" She turned her head slightly, her eyes still distant. "I have a cat. Her name is Whiskers," she replied, her voice gaining a hint of enthusiasm. "She likes to chase butterflies in the garden." "That sounds lovely," William encouraged, feeling the weight of her sadness. "I bet she misses you very much right now." Lily nodded, a flicker of a smile crossing her lips before it vanished. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken fears. William's mind raced as he considered what to do next. He decided to take her to his family's estate. It was big enough to provide a safe haven for Lily, and perhaps there he could figure out how to contact her family. As they arrived at the estate, William parked the car and turned to Lily. "This is my home. You'll be safe here until we can find your parents." He opened the door and stepped out, gesturing for her to follow. The sprawling mansion loomed before them, its grandeur overshadowed by the sense of isolation that hung in the air. Lily stepped hesitantly out of the car, her small feet crunching on the gravel driveway. William noticed how she hesitated, her eyes darting around the unfamiliar surroundings. "Come on, it's okay," he reassured her, leading her towards the front door. Inside, the house felt cold and empty. The walls were adorned with portraits of stern-looking ancestors, their eyes seeming to watch every move. William gestured towards the living room. "You can sit here for a moment. I'll make us something to eat." As he moved towards the kitchen, he could feel Lily's gaze following him, a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He prepared a simple meal, his thoughts drifting to the girl's parents. How had she ended up alone in the woods, and what had happened to her? A faint voice broke his reverie. "Where's your mom?" Lily asked, her eyes wide as she looked up at him. William paused, his heart sinking. "She's here, but she's not well. She mostly stays in her room." He hesitated, unsure of how much to share. "I'll introduce you to her in a bit. I think you two might get along." As he set the table, William felt a sense of urgency wash over him. He had to figure out how to help Lily, but something deeper tugged at him, an instinct perhaps that there was more to this girl than met the eye. After they ate, he led Lily up the grand staircase, the wooden floor creaking beneath their weight. He stopped in front of a door at the end of the hallway. "This is my mother's room," he said quietly. "Let's go say hello." He opened the door slowly, revealing a tastefully decorated room, though it was dimly lit. Margaret Parker sat in a wheelchair, her frail figure draped in a soft blanket. Her silver hair fell loosely around her shoulders, and her eyes, though tired, sparkled with warmth as they settled on her son. "William," she greeted him, her voice soft and gentle. "Mom, I want you to meet someone," he said, stepping aside to reveal Lily, who stood a few steps back, her hands clasped in front of her. Margaret's gaze shifted to the girl. "Hello, dear," she said, a smile lighting up her face. "What's your name?" "Lily," the girl replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily," Margaret repeated, her tone soothing. "What a lovely name. Come here, sweetheart. You can sit with me." Tentatively, Lily approached, her eyes darting around the room before settling on Margaret. William watched as a bond began to form between them, two souls, each carrying their own weight of solitude and longing. But even as he felt a glimmer of hope, a nagging thought lingered in the back of his mind. There was something about Lily that felt enigmatic, as if she were a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Margaret's gaze narrowed slightly as she observed the girl. "William, there's something unusual about her," she murmured, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "What do you mean?" he asked, his brow furrowing in confusion. "I can't quite put my finger on it," she replied, her eyes flickering back to Lily. "But I feel a strange energy from her. It's unsettling." William dismissed her concern, a protective instinct rising within him. "She's just a lost girl, Mom. We need to help her." But as he watched Lily, who was now engrossed in conversation with his mother, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much deeper, a mystery that would soon unravel, pulling them all into its depths. As the days passed in the Parker household, an unusual bond began to blossom between William and Lily. Their shared moments, once filled with uncertainty and fear, transformed into a tender companionship that offered them both a sense of solace. William found himself increasingly captivated by Lily's innocent curiosity and resilience, while Lily felt a sense of safety under William's care that she had long yearned for. They spent afternoons in the sunlit garden, where the vibrant colors of blooming flowers contrasted starkly with the dark clouds that loomed in the corners of their minds. William would often sit on the porch swing, pushing it gently back and forth as Lily sat beside him, her small fingers tracing patterns in the dust on her worn sneakers. "What do you love most about the woods?" William asked one afternoon, breaking the comfortable silence that enveloped them. Lily's eyes sparkled with a mixture of nostalgia and sadness. "The trees feel like they're whispering secrets," she replied softly, her gaze drifting toward the dense thicket beyond the garden. "Sometimes I think they remember things I can't." William's heart squeezed at her words. He wanted to protect her, to shield her from whatever shadows haunted her past. "What kind of secrets?" He probed gently, hoping to uncover a little more about her life before the woods. Lily shrugged, her expression suddenly guarded. "I don't know. Just things about my family, I guess. I just remember being happy then, lost." Her voice trailed off, and she turned her attention to a butterfly flitting nearby, seemingly enchanted by its vibrant colors. William nodded, respecting her silence. He had learned over the past few days that pushing too hard would only push her away. Instead, he decided to share a piece of his own life, hoping it would encourage her to open up more. "You know, when I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time in the woods too. I imagined they were magical, full of fairies and hidden treasures." Lily chuckled softly, the tension in her shoulders easing a bit. "Did you find any treasures?" "Only the best kind," William said, smiling. "I found my imagination. And sometimes, I think that's worth more than gold." Lily looked at him, her eyes wide with genuine interest. "What did you imagine?" "Adventures," he replied, leaning back on the swing as memories flooded back. "I imagined I was a knight saving a princess or a pirate searching for buried treasure. It helped me forget the world outside." Lily tilted her head, her brow furrowing. "What world outside?" "The world of grown-ups," he said, his voice heavy with a hint of melancholy. "The world of expectations, failures, and disappointments." He paused, watching her closely. "But you, Lily, you have the power to create your own world. You can be anything you want." "But what if I don't know what I want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. William's heart ached for her. "That's okay. Sometimes it's about discovering who you are along the way. Just remember, you're not alone. I'm here for you." As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, a sense of peace settled over them. But as night fell, William couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It was in those quiet moments when shadows danced across the walls of their home that he began to notice strange occurrences. One evening, while preparing dinner, William stepped into the living room to find a cherished family photograph missing from the mantelpiece. "Margaret," he called out, glancing toward his mother, who sat in her wheelchair lost in a book. "Have you seen the photo of Dad?" Margaret looked up, her brow furrowed. "I haven't touched it, dear. Are you sure you didn't move it?" William frowned, the unease in his stomach growing. "I could have sworn it was right here." He turned back to the room, scanning for any sign of it. Later that night, as he tucked Lily into bed, he noticed her fidgeting with the blanket, her small hands twisting the fabric nervously. "Everything okay, Lily?" he asked gently, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She nodded, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. I think I heard something." William's heart raced, but he forced a smile. "It's probably just the wind. The woods can be a little spooky at night." "But what if it's not just the wind?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He hesitated, wanting to reassure her. "Whatever it is, I'm right here. You're safe with me." As he turned to leave, he heard her muttering under her breath, words that tumbled out like a forgotten melody. William paused, a chill running down his spine. The language was unfamiliar, its cadence almost haunting. He edged closer, straining to hear. "Lily?" he whispered, unable to contain his curiosity. She stopped, her eyes widening in surprise. I was just talking to myself," she stammered, pulling the blanket up to her chin as if it could shield her from his gaze. "About what?" he asked, his voice low and gentle. "Just things," she replied, avoiding his eyes. "Nothing important." William felt a knot form in his stomach. He wanted to respect her privacy, but the unease clawing at him demanded answers. "You can tell me anything. You know that, right?" Lily nodded but remained silent, her expression distant and closed off. As he left the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. Something that could explain the strange occurrences around the house and the shadows lurking in her eyes. That night, sleep eluded William. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events in his mind. The missing photograph, Lily's evasiveness, the strange murmurs. It all intertwined into a growing web of concern. He needed to know more about her past, to uncover the secrets that clung to her like a second skin. The following morning, William decided to take a different approach. Instead of pressing Lily for answers, he would create an environment where she felt safe to share her story. Over breakfast, he prepared her favorite pancakes, infused with blueberries and whipped cream, hoping the comfort of food would ease her apprehension. As Lily sat at the table, her eyes brightened at the sight of the fluffy pancakes. "Wow, these look amazing," she exclaimed, her previous worries momentarily forgotten. "Just wait until you taste them," William replied, a sense of relief washing over him as he watched her dig in, the tension in her shoulders slowly melting away. Between bites, he casually brought up the topic of family, hoping to draw her out. You know, my dad used to make pancakes like this for me when I was your age. It was our little tradition. Lily looked up, her mouth full, and smiled. Really? What else did you guys do? William felt a warmth spread through him as he reminisced. We would camp out in the backyard, make s'mores, and tell ghost stories under the stars. It was the best. Did you ever see a ghost? Lily asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Not a real one, he chuckled, shaking his head. Just a lot of wild imaginations, but it made for some fun memories. Lily giggled, her laughter like a soothing balm to his worries. I wish I could have memories like that. William's heart sank at her words. You will, Lily. We can create new ones together. You just have to let me in. She paused, her fork hovering over her plate. For a moment, he thought he caught a glimpse of something deeper in her eyes, an understanding, a longing. But just as quickly she looked away, her defenses back in place. As the day wore on, William couldn't escape the feeling that their seemingly ordinary life was on the brink of something extraordinary. The woods held their secrets tightly, and he was determined to unravel them, if only Lily would let him. He knew that to protect her, he needed to understand her fully, and that journey had only just begun. William Parker stepped into the local police station, the faint smell of coffee mingling with the musty scent of old paperwork and worn-out chairs. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly above him, casting a harsh glow over the room filled with bustling officers and a few weary citizens filling out reports. William's heart raced as he approached the front desk, where a middle-aged officer sat, his eyes glued to the computer screen. "Excuse me," William said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'd like to report a missing girl." The officer looked up, his expression shifting from indifference to mild curiosity. "What's her name?" I don't know her last name. She's a little girl about 7 years old. Her name is Lily. I found her lost in the woods a few days ago," William explained, glancing around the room nervously. The officer raised an eyebrow, tapping his fingers on the desk. "And you said you found her lost? Did you not think to call us then?" "I was more concerned about her safety," William replied, his frustration beginning to seep through. "I brought her home with me, but now I'm worried. No one has reported her missing?" The officer's fingers paused over the keyboard. "We haven't had any reports that match your description. Are you sure she didn't just wander off?" William shook his head vehemently. "She's scared, confused. She talks about her family, but it's all jumbled. I need to know if anyone is looking for her." "All right, let me take down some details. Can you describe her?" The officer gestured for William to sit, his demeanor shifting as he recognized the urgency in William's voice. "She's small for her age, with brown hair, and she was wearing a blue dress when I found her. It was dirty and torn. She has this look of fear in her eyes, like she's been through something traumatic," William described, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The officer scribbled notes, nodding occasionally. "We'll put out an alert, but if no one's looking for her, there's not much we can do until someone comes forward." William felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What do you mean? You can't just leave her out there." The officer glanced at him, a flicker of sympathy in his gaze. "Listen, it's not uncommon for kids to get lost. Sometimes they wander off and find their way back. We'll keep an eye out, but you should probably try to get more information from her too." William left the station, the door swinging shut behind him with a dull thud. The cool air hit him like a wave, but he felt no relief. Instead, he was engulfed by a dark cloud of uncertainty and fear. He climbed back into his car, staring out into the dense woods that surrounded the town. How could no one be looking for her? Back at home, the atmosphere was heavy with silence. Margaret was in her usual spot, her wheelchair positioned by the window, sunlight streaming in and illuminating her frail figure. She looked up as William entered, her brow furrowing with concern. "William, is everything all right?" she asked, her voice soft yet laced with worry. "Not really, Mom. I went to the police. They haven't had any reports of a missing girl that matches Lily's description," he replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's troubling. Are you sure she's telling you everything?" "I don't know what to think," William admitted, his shoulders slumping. "She's been through something, I can feel it. But every time I ask her about her family, she clams up. It's like there's a wall she won't let me through." Margaret sighed, her gaze drifting towards the window. Sometimes children hide things for their own protection. It's a defense mechanism. Or it could mean she's hiding something dangerous, William countered, crossing his arms. What if she's involved in something much bigger than we realize? Margaret turned her head to look at him, her expression grave. You must be careful, William. Children can sense things, energies that you might not perceive. There's something about her that gives me an uneasy feeling. William raised an eyebrow, dismissing her concern. She's just a scared little girl, Mom. You're projecting your loneliness onto her. She needs our help, not our suspicion. Margaret shook her head slowly. I'm not saying not to help her. I'm saying to be cautious. Sometimes the past can haunt us in ways we least expect. As the evening wore on, William couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He watched Lily play in the living room, her laughter echoing like a haunting melody against the walls. But underneath that laughter, he sensed an undercurrent of fear. The following day, William decided to delve deeper into the mystery surrounding Lily. He headed to the local library, where he spent hours combing through old newspaper archives. As he flipped through yellowed pages, a series of articles caught his eye. Reports of young girls who had gone missing over the past few years, all seemingly without a trace. His heart sank as he read the descriptions. Each girl was around Lily's age, with similar features. He couldn't believe the coincidences stacking up before him. He took notes, jotting down the names and dates, his mind racing with possibilities. William? A voice interrupted his concentration. He looked up to see Clara, the librarian, standing beside him. You've been here for quite some time. Is everything all right? Not really, he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm looking into some disappearances. I found a girl in the woods, and I think she might be connected to these cases. Clara's expression shifted from concern to intrigue. That's quite the revelation. Have you spoken to the police? They said they haven't had any reports matching her description, he said, frustration creeping into his voice. It's as if she just appeared. Clara looked thoughtful. There's been a lot of talk about those disappearances in town. Some people believe it's connected to the old stories, tales of the woods being haunted. Haunted? William scoffed. You can't be serious. People around here have always believed that the woods hold secrets, she continued, her tone earnest. They say that sometimes the forest takes things, and it's not always willing to give them back. William shook his head, dismissing her words. I need facts, not folklore. As he continued his research, a chill crept up his spine. The more he dug, the more the pieces started to fit together, but not in a way that offered comfort. These girls had vanished without a trace, and with each article he read, he felt the weight of their absence pressing against him. When he returned home later that evening, he found Lily sitting by Margaret, both of them engaged in a game of cards. The sight of them together warmed his heart, but he noticed the way Lily's eyes darted nervously whenever he entered the room. Hey, Lily, he said, forcing a smile as he sat down across from them. What are you playing? Go fish, she replied, her voice small and uncertain. Mind if I join? He asked, hoping to bridge the gap that seemed to grow wider with each passing day. Sure, Lily said, but William could see the hesitation in her eyes. As they played, he tried to engage her in conversation, casually asking about her life before she arrived at his home. But Lily would only smile and shrug, her gaze flickering to Margaret as if seeking reassurance. Lily, do you have any family out there? He asked gently, watching her expression closely. A shadow crossed her face and she looked away. I don't remember. Maybe we can help you remember, he offered, eager to break through her walls. Can we just play? She replied, her voice a little sharper than before. William's heart sank. He exchanged a glance with Margaret, who looked worried but said nothing. As the evening wore on, he kept thinking about the articles he had read, the faces of those missing girls haunting his thoughts. He wondered what secrets Lily was holding back and why she was so afraid to share them. William, Margaret said softly after Lily had gone to bed, you need to tread carefully. You're getting too involved in this. I can't just ignore what's happening, he replied, frustration boiling over. This girl needs help, and I'm the only one who seems to care. Margaret looked at him, her eyes filled with understanding yet concern. Help her, yes, but don't forget to protect yourself. The past has a way of creeping back in when you least expect it. William sighed, feeling the weight of her words. I'll be careful, Mom. I promise. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the precipice of something dark and unknown, a mystery that threatened to consume them all. William Parker sat at the dining table, his mind swirling with thoughts he couldn't seem to capture. The aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, but it was overshadowed by the tension that had seeped into their home over the past few days. Lily sat across from him, her small frame hunched over her plate, pushing food around absent-mindedly. Margaret, his mother, watched them intently from her wheelchair, her eyes narrowing as she observed the girl who had turned their lives upside down. Lily, sweetheart, you need to eat more, William urged gently, trying to break the silence that had settled like a heavy fog. You're getting so thin. I'm not hungry, Lily replied, her voice barely a whisper, her gaze fixed on the tablecloth. There was an air of defiance about her, as if she were deliberately shutting him out. William couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something that tugged at the edges of his consciousness, making him uneasy. Margaret cleared her throat, her voice shaky but firm. You should eat, dear. You need your strength. We can't have you getting sick, too. There was a flicker of concern in her eyes, a glimmer of intuition that had been honed over years of battling her own ailments. William knew Margaret sensed something off about Lily, and it troubled him that he found himself dismissing her warnings. I'm fine, really, Lily said, her tone sharper now. She looked up, her eyes flashing for a moment before she dropped her gaze again. I just want to go home. The word home hung in the air, heavy with implications. Lily, we're trying to help you, William said, his voice steady but laced with frustration. You can't go back to a place we don't even know exists. You're safe here. Safe? She echoed, her eyes narrowing. You don't know what that word means. Not really. William felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if the girl before him wasn't just a lost child. There was an intensity in her that he couldn't quite understand. He exchanged a glance with Margaret, who frowned, a deep crease forming between her brows. Perhaps we should talk about what happened during the camping trip, Margaret suggested cautiously, her voice softening. It might help. Lily's posture stiffened, her shoulders drawing up as if bracing for an unseen blow. I don't want to talk about it, she snapped, a flash of defiance quickly followed by the flicker of fear in her eyes. Lily, William pressed gently, we need to understand what happened. It's important. I said no, she cried, her voice rising, echoing off the walls of the dining room. The tension in the room thickened, and William felt the urge to retreat, to give her space. Instead, he leaned forward, his heart pounding with concern. Please, just trust me. I promise I won't push you too hard, but I can't help you if you keep shutting me out. Lily's expression softened, but only slightly. She looked down at her plate, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the table. You wouldn't understand, she murmured, almost to herself. Try me, William urged, a sense of desperation creeping into his voice. You're not alone anymore. You have us. For a moment, silence reigned in the room, thick and palpable. Margaret watched with bated breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Then, almost imperceptibly, Lily's shoulders relaxed, and she let out a long, shuddering breath. There was a man, she began, her voice trembling. I saw a man in the woods. He was dark. He didn't look like a person. He felt like he was made of shadows. Shadows, William repeated, his heart racing. What do you mean? Lily's eyes flicked up to meet his, wide with a mix of fear and something else, something that felt like recognition. I think he took me. I don't remember much, but I remember him. I remember his voice. It was cold. He said I was special, that I would be his. William felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Do you remember what he looked like? No, she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. I just remember the darkness and the feeling that I was lost. Margaret gasped softly, and William's mind raced. Could Lily be connected to the disappearances? The thought sent a wave of dread coursing through him. Lily, did he hurt you? She shook her head violently, tears spilling over her cheeks. No, I don't think so. I was afraid. I don't remember much after that. Just... I was running away." William could feel the walls of their safe haven closing in, the weight of unanswered questions pressing down on him. "We need to find someone who can help you remember more," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'll do whatever it takes." "Don't," Lily said, her voice suddenly firm, cutting through his resolve. "You don't know what you're asking for. Some things are better left forgotten." Her words hung in the air, echoing the very fears that had begun to take root in William's heart. He wanted to protect her, to shield her from whatever darkness clouded her past, but he also felt an urgent need to uncover the truth. As dinner came to an end, William helped Margaret finish her meal, his thoughts consumed by Lily's revelations. He could feel her watching him, a mix of vulnerability and defiance etched on her face. That night, as he lay in bed, sleep eluded him. The shadows in his room seemed to stretch and twist, echoing Lily's words about the figure in the woods. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was tied to something much larger than he could comprehend. Hours later, he finally surrendered to sleep, but it was restless. Images of Lily, of the dark figure she had described, haunted his dreams. He woke with a start, drenched in sweat, his heart racing. The house was silent, and for a fleeting moment, he felt a surge of relief. But then he remembered Lily, and the unease returned. As dawn broke, he decided to check on her. He approached her room, the door slightly ajar. Pushing it open, he found her sitting on the edge of her bed, her legs swinging, staring out of the window into the dark woods beyond. "Lily?" he called softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned to him slowly, her expression unreadable. "Did you know about the disappearances?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" he replied, stepping closer. "I heard you talking to Mom." Her eyes shimmered, reflecting a mix of emotions. "You're scared of me, aren't you?" William opened his mouth to deny it, but found he couldn't. "I'm scared for you," he admitted. "I just want to protect you." "From what?" she challenged, her gaze piercing through him. "From what I might remember? From the truth?" He hesitated, the weight of her words pressing down on him. "Lily, I need to know. You need to tell me the truth." She turned back to the window, and for a moment the silence stretched between them like a chasm. "What if the truth is worse than the nightmare?" she whispered, almost to herself. The question hung in the air, a haunting echo of the darkness that had begun to envelop their lives. William felt a chill run down his spine. He knew he had to confront the truth, but at what cost? With a heavy heart, he stepped back, feeling the enormity of the journey ahead. Whatever lay ahead, he had to face it, not just for himself, but for Lily, whose past was entwined with shadows that threatened to consume them both. That night, as the moon cast a pale light through the trees, William found himself at a crossroads. The weight of secrets and the burden of trust hung heavily in the air, and he knew that the choices he made in the coming days could change everything. William Parker stood in the waiting room of the therapist's office, the scent of antiseptic mingling with the faint aroma of lavender from a diffuser in the corner. The walls were painted a calming shade of blue, dotted with abstract art that was meant to evoke a sense of peace. Yet, despite the environment designed to soothe, William felt a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. He glanced at Lily, who sat cross-legged on the plush carpet, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Her wide eyes were fixed on the door to the therapist's office, and William wondered what memories might be lurking just beyond that threshold. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, trying to mask his own apprehension with a reassuring smile. Lily met his gaze, her expression a mix of fear and resolve. "I guess," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I can't remember?" William knelt beside her, lowering his voice. "It's okay if you don't. Just take your time. We're here to help you." He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, feeling the warmth of her small frame against his hand. It was moments like these that deepened his feelings for her, feelings that he struggled to reconcile with the responsibility of being her guardian. As the therapist, Dr. Helen Carter, opened the door and gestured for them to enter, William's heart raced. He led Lily inside, where soft lighting and comfortable seating created a welcoming atmosphere. Dr. Carter, a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and a gentle smile, motioned for them to sit. "Welcome, Lily. I'm so glad you're here," she said, her voice calm and inviting. Today we're going to talk about whatever is on your mind. You can share as much or as little as you like. William took a seat beside Lily, offering her silent support. He watched as Dr. Carter leaned forward, her expression encouraging. "Do you want to start by telling me about your family?" Lily hesitated, her brows furrowing in concentration. I don't really remember them," she said slowly, her voice trembling. "I just remember trees and the sound of water, and sometimes a man. He was scary." William's chest tightened at the mention of a man. His thoughts raced back to the newspaper articles he had read about the disappearances and the chilling possibility that Lily might be connected to them. "What was scary about him?" he prompted gently. Lily bit her lip, her eyes glazing over as if she were peering into a distant memory. He had dark eyes, and he would say things, but I couldn't understand. He would take me away from the others." Dr. Carter nodded, guiding her gently. "And what happened when he took you away?" "I don't know," Lily whispered, her hands balling into fists. "I just remember being alone, and then I was lost." Tears pooled in her eyes, and William felt a wave of protectiveness wash over him. "Lily, it's okay to feel scared," Dr. Carter said soothingly. "You are safe here. You can take your time." William reached out, placing his hand on her back, wanting to comfort her but also feeling the weight of the secrets that hung in the air. He wished he could shield her from whatever darkness loomed in her past. As the session continued, fragmented memories spilled from Lily's lips, each one like a shard of glass cutting deeper into William's heart. He listened intently, absorbing each detail, his mind racing with possibilities. The weight of his feelings for her grew heavier, conflicted by the realization that he was falling for a girl who was not just lost, but possibly entangled in a web of horrors he couldn't yet comprehend. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Carter concluded the session, allowing Lily a moment to gather herself. William noticed the way Lily's shoulders slumped, as if the act of remembering had drained her. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "You did great, Lily. I'm so proud of you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As they left the office, a mix of hope and despair churned within him. The session had offered glimpses into Lily's past, but it had also ignited a sense of urgency. He needed to protect her, not only from the world but from the shadows that seemed to cling to her like a second skin. On the drive home, the silence between them was palpable. Lily stared out the window, lost in thought. William struggled to find the right words, his heart heavy with unspoken feelings. He glanced over at her, wanting to bridge the gap between them. "Do you want to talk about what happened in there?" he asked gently, breaking the silence. "I don't know," Lily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's all jumbled up. Sometimes it feels like a dream. Other times, it feels real." "What if I told you that you're not alone? I'm here for you no matter what," William said, his voice earnest. She turned to him, her expression softening. "I know, thank you." The warmth of their connection filled the car, and for a moment, the weight of their circumstances felt lighter. But as they neared home, a sense of foreboding crept back in. The house loomed ahead, its familiar shape now a reminder of the secrets that festered within its walls. Later that evening, William found himself in the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner. The rhythmic sound of chopping vegetables provided a momentary distraction from his swirling thoughts. He knew he had to find a way to help Lily, to uncover the truth buried within her memories. Yet the more he learned, the more he felt his own heart entangled in her fate. "Mom, are you feeling okay?" he called out, glancing toward the living room where Margaret usually spent her evenings. "I'm fine, dear," she replied, her voice distant. "Just tired, I suppose." William finished preparing their meal and set the table, a sense of unease creeping into his thoughts. Margaret had been increasingly withdrawn lately, her health declining even further. He couldn't shake the feeling that her condition was somehow connected to the strange occurrences in the house, Lily's odd behaviors, the sense of dread that hung in the air like a storm cloud. As he served dinner, he stole a glance at Margaret, who sat in her wheelchair, staring blankly at the wall. "Mom?" he ventured, concern lacing his tone. "Yes, William," she replied, as if startled from a trance. "I was just wondering if you've noticed anything unusual about Lily?" Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of awareness crossing her face. "Unusual? You mean besides the fact that she's a lost girl living in our home?" William sighed, feeling the weight of his mother's sarcasm. I mean, she's been having nightmares, and sometimes I feel like she's not fully here, like she's somewhere else. Margaret's expression shifted, and she leaned forward, her voice low. There's something about her, William. I can feel it. She doesn't belong here, not in our lives. His heart raced at her words. What do you mean? She's just a child. She needs us. Sometimes children are not what they seem, Margaret said cryptically, her gaze drifting away again. I can sense things, dear. It's in my bones. Be careful. William's stomach dropped as he absorbed her words. The connection between Lily and his mother's intuition was unsettling. He wanted to dismiss Margaret's concerns, to believe that Lily was simply a lost girl trying to find her way. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were all caught in a storm, and the winds were beginning to howl. Mom, he started, but before he could finish, he heard a soft voice coming from the hallway. William? He turned, startled to find Lily standing at the entrance, her expression uncertain. Can I come in? Of course, sweetheart, he said, his heart swelling at the sight of her. As she approached the table, he felt a flicker of warmth amidst the growing tension in the room. But as he looked at her, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something much darker than he had ever imagined. The house felt alive with secrets, and as the weight of the evening settled over them, he couldn't help but wonder just how deep those secrets ran. The storm raged outside, rain lashing against the windows of William Parker's home like a wild beast trying to break in. The wind howled, and flashes of lightning illuminated the darkened rooms. It was a night steeped in unease, and the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on William as he sat in the dim light of the living room, lost in thought. His mind was a whirlwind of concerns. His mother, Margaret, whose condition seemed to worsen with each passing day, and Lily, the lost girl who had unexpectedly become a part of their lives. Suddenly, a chilling realization struck him. He hadn't heard Lily for a while. Normally, he could hear the soft rustle of her blanket, or the occasional whisper as she spoke to herself in that strange, unrecognizable language. A knot twisted in his stomach as he glanced at the clock. It was well past her bedtime. Lily, he called, his voice steady despite the rising panic within him. No response. Lily, he called louder, rising from his chair. He moved toward her room, heart pounding in his chest. The door stood slightly ajar, and dread pooled in his stomach as he pushed it open. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made, the blanket folded back as if she had never been there. Lily! He shouted again, desperation lacing his voice. He rushed through the house, flinging open closets and checking behind curtains, but there was no sign of her. His breath quickened as he realized she must have gone outside. Rain poured down in sheets as William stepped onto the porch, squinting into the darkness. Lily! He yelled into the storm, hoping his voice would reach her. He felt the weight of the night pressing down on him, the shadows seeming to stretch and dance as the lightning flashed. He sprinted toward the woods, where the trees loomed like ancient guardians. The underbrush crackled beneath his feet as he called her name again and again. Lily, where are you? His voice echoed through the forest, swallowed by the cacophony of the storm. As he ventured deeper into the woods, the familiar paths became obscured by shadows. He felt a shiver run down his spine, not just from the cold, but from a sense of foreboding. The trees whispered secrets he couldn't decipher, and the wind carried a haunting melody that seemed to mock his search. Then he spotted a flicker of movement, a light in the distance. Hope surged through him as he pushed forward, heart racing. As he approached, he recognized a narrow, overgrown path that led deeper into the forest, a path he had never noticed before. Lily! He shouted again, the urgency in his voice heightened. He followed the path, brushing aside branches and ducking under low-hanging limbs. The air was thick with moisture, and the scent of damp earth filled his lungs. After what felt like an eternity, he emerged into a small clearing where an old cabin stood, half hidden by the encroaching foliage. Its weathered wood and crumbling roof blended almost seamlessly with the surroundings, as if nature had swallowed it whole. Lily, he called, fear gnawing at him. He approached the cabin cautiously, the door hanging slightly open, creaking ominously as he nudged it with his hand. The interior was dim, illuminated only by the occasional flash of lightning, revealing a scene that made his blood run cold. Inside, the cabin was a tomb of memories long forgotten. Photographs adorned the walls, faded images of young girls with bright smiles and hopeful eyes, each one a reminder of the innocence lost. His heart raced as he recognized Lily among them, her face indistinguishable from the others, but unmistakably hers. "What is this place?" he whispered, his voice trembling. As he stepped further in, he noticed strange artifacts scattered around. Dolls with missing limbs, broken toys, and other remnants of childhood that felt eerily out of place. A chill crept up his spine as he realized the connection, the dark thread that tied this all together. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound behind him, a rustling that made him spin around. And there she was. Lily stood in the doorway. But something was different about her. The light flickered, casting her features in unsettling shadows. Her hair, usually tousled and wild, now hung straight and slick against her face. A haunting smile spread across her lips, one that sent a shiver down his spine. "You found me," she said, her voice melodic yet chilling, echoing through the cabin. "Now you must choose." William's heart raced as he stared at her, trying to comprehend the weight of her words. "Choose. Choose what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the warmth of familiarity now replaced by a cold dread. Lily stepped closer, the storm outside howling in response to the tension that hung in the air. "You've uncovered the truth, William. This place, it holds the memories of many, including yours." Her eyes glinted with a knowing light, one that unsettled him. "You must decide what to do with them." "What do you mean?" he stammered, trying to process her words. The past few weeks flashed before him, the strange occurrences, the way she spoke in tongues, the inexplicable connection he felt toward her. "What do I have to do with this?" She tilted her head, the smile never wavering. "You have the power to change everything, to save me or to let me go." William felt as if the ground beneath him was crumbling away. "Let you go?" he echoed, confusion washing over him. "What do you mean? You're safe here with me." "Safe?" She laughed softly, a sound that sent ice through his veins. "I'm not the one you should be worried about. You've been searching for answers, but sometimes the truth is darker than the mystery itself." The weight of her words pressed down on him. He remembered the missing girls, the strange occurrences in his home, and the nagging feeling that something about Lily's presence was intertwined with his own past. "You're connected to those disappearances, aren't you?" he breathed, realization dawning on him like the storm clouds above. "Perhaps," she said, her voice lilting, almost playful. "But it's not what you think. I'm not the monster here, William. You need to decide who you want to be, the protector or the one who walks away." William's mind raced as he looked around the cabin, the haunting images of the girls gazing back at him. He felt the weight of their lost lives pressing down on his conscience. "I can't leave you," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I can't abandon you to this." "Choose," she repeated, her expression shifting from innocence to something more sinister. "You can save me, or you can let me become what I was always meant to be." With that, the storm outside roared, shaking the very foundations of the cabin. The flickering light cast eerie shadows that danced around them, and William stood frozen at the crossroads of his own destiny, grappling with the impossible decision laid before him. As the thunder rumbled overhead, he faced a darkness that threatened to consume him, and in that moment, he knew that whatever choice he made would alter the course of their lives forever.